Welcome to the One in the Many. This is a conversation with Robert Begley. Robert, I'm very happy to see you again and welcome back to the One in the Many.
Thank you, Arshak. This is an amazing program you have. And I'll just say I'm excited. Here's one reason I'm excited. We've already talked about two different aspects of the book, Voices of Reason, but because your, I think your expertise is integration, and there's a lot of integration in this book. And I suggested, hey, let's focus on ethos, logos, and pathos as a means of integration and make the episode about that.
Absolutely. So, one commendable characteristic of your work is that you go back to fundamentals. I mean, there's plenty of work out there on communication. And communication, usually, the way it's expressed conventionally, is technical development of a skill of projecting information to an audience. But you go back to Aristotle's fundamental understanding of philosophy and life and use Aristotle as a guide to explore communication on a much deeper level, which integrates you with your knowledge of objectivism and Ayn Rand's understanding that the moral is the practical and the practical is the moral. And you have the speeches, seven incredible speeches of incredible individuals to demonstrate that. And then on top of everything, you integrate your own life in relation to those individuals and historic times and moments. So it's really commendable work. I really enjoy it, and I'm very happy that you are back to discuss your book, Voices of Reason. And I should tell whoever is listening that you also have this weekly essays that you post.
Yes,
I
rhetoric
think,
tips.
what do you call them?
Rhetoric tips.
Rhetoric
Because
tips.
rhetoric
Yes.
is, rhetoric has a bad reputation, and I want to show how good it is.
Yeah, yeah. And you have so far, I think 52 of them, right? I just noticed
Yes,
the 52nd one,
yes.
and you have decided to expand on it. So I think anybody who's listening, who is interested in the process and, give it a more understanding and see more nuanced explanations of the process that you present through the book and those tips, it's a great way to maintain the message of the book fresh every week to yourself.
Great point, Arshak. That's one of my purposes because I'm not going to change you overnight. You have decades of experience and patterns and beliefs and methods of thinking. One conversation won't change all that. But if you hear something once a week that moves the needle just a little bit, makes you think, again, this is a recommendation for your program because that's what you do in your podcast. And for my purpose, it's like, hey, once a week in your inbox, it's short, 2 minute, 3 minute read, but it's an application and it's a way to see rhetoric as a virtue and not a vice.
Right. So, to further explore the fundamentals of this virtue, we decided at this meeting to explore the three main ideas that drive the um, process. And these are Aristotle's understanding of ethos, logos, and pathos. Um, so you have an idea of um, expressing this
Mm-hmm.
through integration in a broader sense. So let's start with what you have in mind. How do you see ethos,
Sure.
logos, and
Yeah.
pathos?
Well, let's give an everyday man's description of each of them so people know where we are, what we're talking about. So for ethos, the question is, can I trust this person? Someone you're speaking to, whether they're on stage, whether it's in a boardroom, whether it's on a podcast. Can I trust them? That's their ethos. The logos is, does this, what they're talking about, does this make sense? All right. Or am I hearing something contradiction? Are they asking me to take them just because they're an expert, take their word for it? That's the logos. And then the pathos is, why should I even care? I got better things to do. I'm watching the World Cup, you know? I don't know if you are. Frankly, I haven't been watching it, but a lot of the world is. And so why should I care? This person is speaking in front of me and they're blocking my view of the TV, you know? So, but the point here, I'm glad you're laughing. The point here is a message is persuasive when all three align, which comes back to your point of integration. And any weakness in one of them creates some kind of resistance. So I'm going to put this out there for you and for our audience. Is persuasion really the process of integrating trust, reason, and emotional significance into a unified judgment? I figure that's something we could just talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this goes back to storytelling. Um, when and how do individuals experience a story as compelling, as something that they want to see themselves as a character in it? Well, you cannot transfer that kind of relation unless you comprehend the sequence of events that take place in the story, experience them as your own from the worldview of the character that you relate to in the story. And so, persuasion, be that technical or uh, um, moral, it comes from that place of understanding the world through your process of integration. By placing yourself in the process and seeing how efficient or deficient, complete or incomplete your process of integration is as related to what has been described to you or projected onto you. And so you become persuaded when you have a complete understanding of the process given to you. And sometimes you'll be persuaded that the story is not complete, it's not fully developed. And that is a persuasion of understanding the incompleteness of the process of communication. So you may add to it by understanding the deficiency of it. So persuasion is not a full picture conviction. It's a conviction of the understanding of the process that was motivated to present that communication in the first place.
Mhm.
So once I understand the process, I want to communicate it.
Mhm.
Now, that communication will be persuasive if I could make you, as my audience, understand it in the same manner that I understand it. Now, both of us have the responsibility to reduce it back to reality and let reality validate the process for both of us.
Mhm.
When that happens, we are very happy and we are ready to exchange value for value.
Mhm. And that's a productive conversation. And it's not one person lecturing and the other person simply sitting there and nodding their head. This is what I mean when I say a really good speech, a really good presentation is a dialogue, not a monologue. Because a monologue is basically one person just lecturing to the audience or the other person. And it's hard to get buy in if you're not an active part of that process. if you're passively sitting there and somebody is somewhat imposing on you their ideas, and you're not necessarily grasping them, but they're going no matter what. So a dialogue is like, wait, hold on, I don't get that. Can I try to reframe it in words I understand? And then you can come back and say, yes, but I mean really this and that. And uh, that's that's when the dialogue becomes productive, as you were talking about.
I think it's useful to make a differentiation in the communicative context.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing wrong with a lecture style communication within the university, within a relationship between a master and apprentice, between a professor and a
Mm-hmm.
student. But there is a issue of that format when it comes to delegating the importance of a condition that may not be fully appreciated by the masses, and an individual gets up and starts lecturing the masses on
Yeah.
that inefficient understanding of the process. That's not productive. What is productive is to explicate the process in its full manifestation, and
Mm-hmm.
then let the masses, each individual member of that group, determine the urgency of the manifestation and realize the inefficiency of their understanding prior to the communication of that full explication.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's not a lecture kind of authoritarian presentation of the facts of reality, but it's more of a presenting a complete picture that, based on the activities of institutionalized social order, that manifestation has been lacking. And so all those great speeches that you present in the book have that canon to them, that ethos, right?
Yes.
What makes them credible to the audience is because everybody in the masses senses some kind of tension, some kind of constraint, but it's mostly implicit. It's not articulated. And when the courage of explicitly articulated mind gets up in front of them and delivers the articulation, everybody gets behind it.
Mm-hmm. Mhm. Yeah, if I could just add to that before going on to the second point. By the way, roadmap for your audience, 5 points that I'd like to cover today. So that was the first one, like integrating all three. The Just so they can know, your audience can know, there's something called the Socratic method, which was Socrates asking questions of his audience and then pulling out of them. Now, this, like anything, can be abused. And some versions of Socrates, I heard he'll pull everything out of them and eventually say, you see, you were a master in physics. You just didn't know it, like that. That's an abuse of that technique. But really, it's when you ask, you give prompts, you prompt the person to think of things they might not have thought of consciously. And that's what a good teacher does, that because it's really about asking questions. And frankly, I think I have a rhetoric tip on that. It was only a few weeks ago I covered that point, is that a good communicator asks questions of the audience. So, but since you led us in directly to ethos, point number two, why character matters more than technique. And I wanted to go to the book for direct quote on page 17, just a short reading. So, how I explain ethos based on Aristotle's definition. So I say ethos is about establishing the speaker's moral character. Aristotle believed that people are more likely to be persuaded by someone they trust. Combined with being an authority on the subject at hand, moral character establishes credibility and trust. He explained, quote, persuasion is by means of character whenever the speech is spoken in such a way as to make the speaker trustworthy. This means the speaker's credibility is about content of one's speech as well as how the speaker presents themselves and their reputation. So, ethos involves demonstrating trustworthiness, authority, and integrity on the subject at hand. And of course, integrity is part of integration that I wanted to bring up here. So, just your thoughts on that, Arshak, and then I want to come back to something you mentioned earlier. But I since I just read this, I want to stay in line here.
Sure. Integrity, consistency, um, those demonstrate competence.
Hmm.
And it is not ephemeral, momentary competence. It's long, enduring competence through time. And if you see someone jump 2 meters, you'll be impressed. But if he repeats it and only jumps 1.5 meters, you'll be disappointed. But if he consistently jumps those 2 meters and even improves by a centimeter or two above them or beyond them, then you'll be even rooting for him to go a greater distance. So character manifests itself in time. It's not something that you gain in first encounter. You may fall in love at first sight, but that sight carries with itself a long term development. And what you're responding to is the recognition of that progression of development.
Hmm.
You identify the process, you identify the status, the achievement. And so, if anyone today had no idea who Martin Luther King was, and yet they found themselves out of context in the midst of his presentation, it will be still compelling because of the way he presented it, and not so much the way he presented, but the way everybody around you will be listening to that presentation.
Yes.
And everybody around you will respond in a manner that will make that presentation significant to you. You'll be motivated to understand why everybody is moved so deeply by
Hmm.
that presentation.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Great.
so that will raise the question for you, what is it so special about this man and what he says that everybody responds in the manner they do? And
Mm-hmm.
that is going to start the journey for you to explore what kind of characteristics make men so influential, so um, persuasive, so
Hmm.
effective.
Hmm.
And fundamentally, we understand that character is everything. I mean, um, my memory goes to Andy Burstein. Actually, it was at the uh, party that we had at his place when we first started the New York Hero Society,
Hmm.
and we went around the room and said, "What's the most important thing in life?" And Andy said, "Character." So
Yeah.
I mean that's the you know, and Andy's a professional philosopher, among other
Yes.
things, but as an author and philosopher, he understands the depth of that significance. That character is everything. If you don't have um, the moral standing of a good character, no matter what you say, it will fall short.
Hmm. Yeah, if I could piggyback on that, starting with Andy, for about 2 years, he and I had a podcast together called The Hero Show, and we covered a wide variety of heroes. And at the end of the day, we knew these heroes were flawed, perhaps in their personal lives, perhaps in one or two things, but it was their moral character that made them heroic in that sense, worth celebrating. And so you're totally right on that. And this is perfectly in line with what ethos is. And if I give it a single definition, single description, actually, I would say ethos is integration made visible. Okay, it's really something that's made visible. I'm piggybacking on Ayn Rand when she says honor is like, self esteem made visible. It's like something put where you could just visually see it. And that is something that, oh, okay. When you can see something in action, you mentioned the athlete, running and jumping a certain distance. But I want to come back, Arshak, to what you said at the end of the first point about differentiation. Because we talk integration, integration, integration. And I'm going to leave that to you. Unpack this idea of the importance of differentiation, because what do we know? We don't know how to integrate things into our life unless we know what to differentiate it from.
Right, right. So, I mean, we are perceptual beings. We sense the world through at least five modalities of sense perception. And then those senses give us perceptual picture of the world. But that picture, as it's global, it's also local. And so the local is that, yes, I see a sea of people in front of me at my presentation, but then I also see all those pairs of eyes staring at me, waiting for me to say something important so they can focus on more deeply. And so I am differentiating the group in every individual. And some of those individuals will be very dear to me, and most of them will be strangers to me that may become dear in the future, depending on our connection with them. And so, based on how we're going to connect with each other, I can start integrating a relationship with them. But the basic point is that, as Ayn Rand defined reason, is the material provided by the senses that the mind integrates. You cannot integrate unless you have something to integrate. And to have that something, you have to differentiate it from the totality. And, Ram Pisaturo makes the point in his book, Validation of Knowledge, on the term of the universe. Universe is the many turn into one. And you can only understand the universe through each one of it. And to gain that broader, greater integration, you have to do a lot of differentiating. So the more you differentiate, the better material you have for integration.
Yeah, great, great. Just coming back, this will be my last point on the ethos. You just said we're perceptual beings, and of course, so are animals. The difference between us is that we are also conceptual beings. So I would say when people observe perceptually and then integrated conceptually, consistency between what you believe, what you say, and how you act, they experience trust. Okay. So, for instance, why do some leaders inspire confidence even before they speak? And then why do others, integration, differentiation, why do others create skepticism even when they have their facts correct? Well, the answer is ethos.
Right. Right. Yes. Character definitely. Well, it's interesting, in that respect, because you said it even when the facts are correct. So it becomes really problematic in social organization when you have a dishonest man tell you something that is true.
Yes.
And because you have judged him as dishonest, you don't pay attention to what he's saying that it's actually meaningful. And so it creates all kinds of issues throughout history. I mean, the Roman Empire is full of that kind of
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
dynamics. And uh, partly that's the reason why civilizations collapse, because you lose um, the authenticity of the moral principles that the civilization was based on, and that creates the tension that eventually disintegrates the whole system.
Yeah.
Um, but
I want
yeah,
to I want to go more to that when we get to pathos,
yeah,
Arshak, because that's an
yeah,
important point. Because I
yeah,
think a lot of times being outright dishonest, nobody will trust you. But the way dishonest people succeed is being honest sometimes, giving some things that extends their quote credibility over a
right,
certain period of time, you know. But when
right,
you have a guy say pointing the finger, I did not have sex with that woman, you know, and we all know he's lying, and then 2 months later, corporations are paying him $100,000 to give a speech. Something's wrong, you know, something's wrong in the culture. Okay. And the equivalent happened back in, you're right, during the Roman Empire. So history tends to repeat itself. Okay, let's go to point three, logos, if unless you want to follow up on that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so logos is the structure of reality and rational persuasion. And I want to go back to you, the first, you know, first session together. This is number three, I believe, where you challenged me. I said technically a more appropriate title would be Voices of Rhetoric. And you said, no, actually, it's really Voices of Reason, because and you showed the wider implications of what reason is. So here in Logos, I'm going to start by, again, quoting from the book, which is her description. No, I'm sorry, my description of Logos. Aristotle emphasized the importance of logic and persuasion, claiming that a speaker must present arguments that are sound, consistent, and well supported by evidence. Evidence is essential to logos. He stated, and persuasion is by means of speech whenever we show something that is true or appears so from things that are persuasive on each subject. So this means that an argument must be rational and well structured in a way that makes it compelling and relevant to the audience. Of course, I have more details in the book, but I just want to start with like that first descriptor of what logos is, because if you don't have logos, and we can elaborate on this, everything falls apart and you really won't persuade people.
Yeah. Um, you know, Aristotle is the father of logic. So
Yeah.
I mean, um, I don't remember exactly when in history, but I think it was around the Renaissance time when Aristotle was identified as the
The
philosopher.
philosopher. That's right.
Right.
Yes. Mhm.
So, and logic is only one of the things that he generously gave
Yes.
us to contemplate on. And Ayn Rand developed a rare in history systematic philosophical thought. And she said that she stands on the shoulders of Aristotle. That Aristotle is the only philosopher that she can credit.
Yeah.
And
The
in
greatest of your philosophers, if
right,
in John
right,
Gall's speech.
right, exactly. So she went back to um, refine the understanding of logic. She said, logic is the art of non contradictory identification.
Identification. How
And
concise is that, Arshak? You know, when you could squeeze something down to something so succinct, that's a genius. That's a genius standing on the shoulders of another genius. Sorry, I get excited
Yeah,
when some
but
of these
that's
things come.
exactly what persuasion is, right? So she got persuaded by Aristotle because she already got persuaded by her non contradictory identification of
Yes.
reality. And she understood the deeper point that that's art. In Zero to One, uh, Peter
Peter Thiel?
Thiel,
Yeah.
right? Peter
Hmm.
Thiel discusses two types of cultures in Silicon Valley: the engineer and the marketer. So the engineers believe is that I am building something very significant, something great, and I don't need to advertise it. It should speak for itself. That's how good it is. Well, logic is that good. A is A. Everybody knows it, but few abide by it. I don't care how good the iPhone is. If Steve Jobs didn't have the marketing genius to sell it to the world in a manner that he did, the iPhone would never be known. It's a great product, but who cares? How am I going to make it my own? It's yours as an engineer, as a designer. Good for you. But if you're the only one who appreciates the value of it, it's nothing. So it's an art. It's an art form that needs to be communicated.
Hmm.
And the character of Steve Jobs speaks for itself. I mean, he shows up on the stage and everybody listens, right?
Arshak, it's something because you just triggered for me a thought on just on this last point. In Atlas Shrugged, the the most popular innovator in the book, at least the first three quarters of the book, is Hank Reardon. And you don't see advertisements for his, not only do you not see advertisements, he has the government blocking him at every turn, but his product is so good that the right people buy it. And the movers and shakers of the novel buy it, which yields the benefit for the general public. And that's an example where brilliance is rewarded until it's punished. Sadly, in a collapsing culture, it tends to be punished. But for our purposes, yes. So the logos of the argument that Steve Jobs made, it's like, hey, this can change your life. You didn't know you need this. That was the difference with Steve Jobs. We didn't know we needed the iPhone. How do we ever live without it? You get younger people, their whole lives, the iPhone has existed. They don't know life dialing a telephone like this.
Not only that, but he said explicitly in one of his presentations of his products that I don't go to consumer committees and stuff
Focus
like that
groups. I don't do
because
focus groups.
right, they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
I mean,
Same
how
as Henry
could
Ford. He
they?
didn't want to make a faster horse and buggy. He's like, I know we need some, and this is an important point, Arshak, because we are both also about innovation. What and free society, how innovations flourish in a free society as opposed to collapsing a dictatorial society, which you escaped, fortunately. And so here, the logical structure of an argument backed by evidence. This is where we are going. Evidence cannot contradict. You can't pass go, collect $200 if you don't follow the logical reasoning of the chain in front of you. And if you're not sure, ask a question. Again, this is the dialogue part, where someone's trying to present facts. Now you have two choices. You can say, I'm not sure, explain that, or let me come back with a question. Or as Rand shows, this is something Aristotle doesn't really go into detail, you can evade that. You can just choose not to look at it and say, like, I don't really like to talk politics, but as an example, the rise of, quote, democratic socialism, especially in our beloved New York City, It's these people who have no clue. They're going completely with theory. All the evidence they've ever seen of societies that have turned into dictatorships, they're evading that. They just see a good looking young guy who smiles and telling some, giving promises of A, B, and C. And that's where evasion comes in as opposed to following the evidence.
Yeah, and I mean, this goes back to what are you differentiating? When Steve Jobs introduces the iPhone, his differentiations are very different from his audience's differentiation. The iPhone is the integrated product of all his differentiations that people have missed. And this goes to the deeper point of the art of non contradictory identification, because we all have identification capacity, but the art comes in finding that finitude, the graduality of the differentiation. How much more can I go into the scale of differentiation, the scope of
Mhm.
differentiation,
Yeah.
and each degree opens up the horizon for a wider, broader integration and a more denser integration. So logic helps us keep those links together. It helps us solidify the relationship between differentiation and integration.
Hmm.
But
Perfect.
the question that arises from that is that that process, as valid as it is, it's finite. It's not
Hmm.
infinite. And what
Yes.
makes it finite is the understanding of context. Everything is done within context.
Right.
And you can expand the context, but only when you have satisfied the condition of the previously generated non
No.
contradictory identification.
Yes. Hmm. Hmm.
And so um, th- uh, that's one aspect of the significance of why these three go together, that you have ethos, logos, and pathos. And it's not that they're separate dynamics, they're one dynamic working in different ways on that art of non-contradictory identification. So you can attempt to focus on one for whatever purpose, but you should never forget the rest. And that's the
The
point
many,
we wanted to
the
bring.
many others.
Right.
Sticking to our theme of the
Yeah.
program.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect segue here, Arshak. Perfect segue to pathos, which the way I'm labeling it is why emotion is not the opposite of reason. Which, if you read the history of philosophy, which you and I have done many, many times, we see the two are opposed often. But we know Aristotle didn't think so. We know Ayn Rand didn't think so. So, again, going to my book, page, this will be page 22. Aristotle knew that effective persuasion requires more than just credibility and logic. Here's your integration point. It also demands a deep emotional connection between the speaker and the audience. He says, quote, persuasion is by means of hearers whenever they are led on into passion by the speech. For we do not render our judgments the same way when we are grieved as when delighted, or when friendly as when holistic. I'm sorry, when hostile. I should wear glasses. Okay, this passage highlights two key points of pathos: the role of emotions in shaping judgment, and the necessity of understanding the audience's emotional state. So, with that, if you remember, Arshak, session one, our first session together, you were in an emotional state. You had just come from a dear family member, of a funeral or a wake of a family friend for decades. And we chose to soldier on. I'm not in my best emotional state, I said right beforehand, but it's like, hey, the show must go on in the sense that we're providing value for the audience. They very likely won't get anywhere else. So you and I have this limited time. So let's forge ahead. So, with that, knowing the audience's frame of mind, we need to be ready for that and have our message take that into account. And so a lot of people, for instance, assume logic is good, but emotion is manipulation. And that's where Aristotle definitely rejected that point. And so the sophists I mentioned in the book, they were the ones who just went by emotion. And of course, there's a comeback today. You know, if I could even mention the political point, where you just have this blind emotion and people throw out reason, and they tend to even throw out ethos. They just go by emotion. In the book, my differentiator in the book is actually the chapter on Winston Churchill, where I talk about the power of the spoken word that Vladimir Lenin had, that Adolf Hitler had, because they went by this blind emotion. And we're saying that is wrong. That's not an integration, that's a differentiation between ethos, logos, and pathos.
Yeah, it is very powerful and interesting dynamic because Descartes is known for I think, therefore I am.
Rene
And
Descartes. Mm-hmm.
right, and Ayn Rand said, no, let's say I am, therefore I think.
I will think.
Right. So,
I am, therefore I'll think. Like I'll
right,
choose to use my mind. Great
right.
point, Arshak. Mm-hmm.
But distinction is very important because we are born as bundles of sensation, and we develop ourselves through perception to get to conception. It takes a long time for human species to develop through those stages and then continuously developing the latest stage in relation to the earlier two. So the three become one. It's the one in the many at all times of breathing and existing. Animals, mammals in particular, don't have that constraint. Mammals are born 80% myelinated in the nervous system, which means that what we observe in nature is that, you know, a Bambi comes out of uh, the deer, and it's in moments it's on its four legs, and then it starts eating, and you know it's like functional within minutes of birth. For us it takes at least a couple of years to become partially functional without assistance, right? And then another 18 years to be really on our own. So it's a long process. But in that process, we're in motion. And motion is what emotion refers to. Emotion is out motivating direction. So it's
Mm-hmm.
emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So that motion, it's very dear to us. We don't want to be arrested in a stagnant stand. We want to be dynamically mobile.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, if I can entice you to consider yourself moving without much effort, you'll be tempted. And that is the whole point of the distinction between the engineers and the advertisers in Silicon Valley that Peter Thiel brings in 0 to 1. Engineers are completely against emotion, they only rely on logic.
They are therefore disintegrated.
well, maybe misintegrated, but not
Okay, yeah,
necessarily
not
disintegrated.
integrated one way or another.
Not properly integrated. So they have to have both. And the advertisers don't care about logic. They're the sophists, right? So they're also misintegrated. And so to find the union of the proper understanding of ethos, logos, and pathos is to see pathos through ethos and logos. You cannot see pathos as separate from ethos and logos. So Ayn Rand also here refines this relationship. She identifies emotion as a valuation, as a metaphysical autonomic signal to the way you value the interaction that
Mhm.
gave rise to your emotion.
Can
And
I
so,
bring one?
yeah.
Go ahead, finish your sentence, and then I want to
So,
jump in.
so in that sense, you can see how important emotion is, because whether you implicitly or explicitly understand the uh, value of emotion, you are manifesting your interaction with the world in a manner that makes it valuable to you, which makes it meaningful to you. And so the appeal to emotion is a very powerful technique to get someone's attention and action.
Great, great. So before coming to the final point five that I would like to cover in today's session, you just quoted Ayn Rand, but there's another quote of Ayn Rand that I want to kind of unpack for the audience because we're showing, you and I are talking about the value of emotion, how it's necessary, and pathos is necessary. But Ayn Rand also says emotions are not tools of cognition. Can we just talk about that a little bit to distinguish? Let's differentiate where we think emotion is good and where we think it is not its proper purpose.
Right, because um, I mean, a drop of water falls on my bare skin and I sense it and I react to it. But it could be a reaction that it's like as if somebody, um, struck me with a staff. In other words, it could be exaggerated reaction to that drop of water. It could be
Mm-hmm.
anxiety or something bad is happening
Mm-hmm.
to me. Instead of realizing that it's just a drop of water and maybe, a drizzle is starting or rain is starting. So it's not a big deal. So the way you respond to it, it doesn't inform you what it is. It only tells you the state of mind that you're in relation to what's happening. In order to understand what's happening, you have to employ differentiation and integration. You have to differentiate the fact of the drop of water from the imaginary blow of staff or the imaginary anxious perception that you may carry in your subconscious that over exaggerate the experience. And so emotion cannot be cognitive in a sense. It cannot be informative of what should you do, but it tells you directly what state you are in. And in effect, it tells you, hey, pay attention to this. So you better start differentiating and integrating to figure out why it is that you're in that state of mind right now in this context. And so it is only through differentiation and integration that you can achieve the art of non contradictory identification, and that you can delimit the context in which you are exercising that art. Emotions are there to remind you that everything that you've achieved in the process of developing the art, you have developed a worldview, you have developed a stand in life which can help you manage the interaction of the world. I mean, that's in a nutshell, but I have many episodes
Hmm.
discussing this.
Okay, no, that's good enough. That's good enough. Let's move on again to the final point. My final point, at least, the ultimate thesis of the book, which is you can refer to it in my book, but it's that communication, most communication tools focus on confidence, presentation skills, speaking techniques. But Voices of Reason is different. Here, the central claim is that effective communication is an integration of character, reason, and emotion in the service of like the truth. So, even more simply, the goal is not merely to speak well, it's to become the kind of person whose words deserve to be heard. And that's why it's ethos focused. That's my ethos focused philosophy of communication. And that's my ultimate point here.
Yeah, I think this goes back to when do you know that somebody is persuaded by your
Yeah. Hmm.
communication? What is the effect of your communication? And again, unless I articulate the value of the context that I'm presenting, and unless that value is adapted, perceived, internalized, integrated in the mind of the audience, in the experience of the audience, um, there will be a short lasting effect. I mean, you can remember from your experience in a lecture hall, listening to a lecture, getting a great satisfaction, but then a day later or minutes later, you forget it. You know, after having a couple of drinks and discussing the points of the lecture, it was great experience. But then the next day, so what? It was a good party. That's all.
Hmm.
Whereby you listen to Patrick Henry and he says, "Give me liberty or give me dead." Well, that's not something you forget because your life is on the line, literally. I mean, it's not just rhetoric, it's not academic talk, it's not exposition of a theory or, you know, talking about something that may happen in the distant future. No, this affects you right now. And if I can bring the process of thinking, the process of abstraction to the level of the significance that these simple words convey. Give me liberty or give me death. Give me truth or give me death. Give me reason or give me death. Give me logic or give me death. You know, if I can convey the significance of those things, then they're effective, right? Because that's what life is about. Life is all about differentiation and integration as far as the human
Perfect.
species is
Yeah.
concerned. So if I cannot communicate that um, effectively enough, that means that the differentiations are not powerful enough to move you. The integrations are not powerful enough to move you. So I have to discover a pathway in which one cannot live without the other, and you cannot live without the whole. And that becomes a very powerful dynamic. Now, I'm often a slow speaker and and a quiet speaker, and that may take away from the effectiveness of communication. But many people throughout history have spoken in an awkward way, and yet they say something significant that it's worthwhile listening to.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so the written word has been always much more effective than the spoken word. It takes a special persona, like all those people that you single out
Hmm.
in your book, that they
Hmm.
have the stature of communication necessary to be effective, because and that goes to the pathos, right? Because pathos is not just the uh, the differentiation in your intonation or pronunciation or clarity of voice and so forth, projection of voice, but it's the whole package. The way
Yes.
you're going to stand in front of the audience, the way you're going to project your voice, the way you're going to pose and speak fluently, and um,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
I mean, all these dynamics, they play a crucial role in accentuating the message and making it more effective. But
Yeah, if I
again,
could
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry. Arshak, just on that, there was a lot that you covered. Uh, Let me work my way backwards with speaking styles. So I'm not sure if you know the comedian Stephen Wright from the Boston area.
Don't know
He
him.
tells these jokes in a deadpan. There's no variety. There's no excitement. He's like the polar opposite of Robert Williams, who is all emotion, all. And if you get, so imagine you've never seen Robin Williams like act normal, like he's always on stage. He's always, frankly, always on drugs. But so there are different styles for different types of comedians and speakers. So for me as a coach, as an advisor, I say, how can we work with what you have, which is most natural to you, and still get that message becoming memorable? So, for instance, we talked about storytelling. Your story is amazing. I've brought this up in the past. Everybody needs to know you escaped a dictatorship, came to the United States, studied in a seminary, read the Fountainhead, and just everything. Your two different worlds collided, and here you are living the American dream. It's like everyone who's 19, between age 15 and 20, should hear Arshak's story, no matter how you tell it, no matter which way you choose to emphasize. So that's just one thing on methodology of being persuasive in ideas. And coming back to the Patrick Henry quote, give me liberty or give me death. If we make this, bring this forward to the 20th, 21st century, Viktor Frankl, in his great work on his experience, meaning of basically man's search for meaning, which is another book young people should read, because I think one reason there's so much chaos and violence is they don't have meaning in their lives. But Frankl could tell who wanted to live and who would let the oppressive situation cause them to die, the will to give up. They just basically um, gave up the will to live and didn't make it. He spent a lot of his time around suicide people, even before the World War II broke out and he's sent to concentration camps. So Frankel is one good example. And then I might have mentioned this in the past, it's certainly in my book, in China during the Tiananmen Square massacre, signs, you could find it, say, give me, in Mandarin, give me liberty or give me death. So Patrick Henry's words, these people are choosing to fight. And one hero I'm friends with, Feng Shou Zhao, is they it's more important to them. Speaking out, standing up and speaking out is more important to Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King. So if I could say, if I have a closing point here for today's episode, the courage to speak out. Because when we mentioned the moral character and Andy Bernstein and the Hero Show, the other aspect they had moral character, and baked into that was the courage to take action and to speak out. So for your audience, tap into that courage, because there's a lot of bad going on out here in the culture. And the better minds, part of that is poor communication. They are succeeding because some of the best communicators either stay silent, they're afraid of critique, but the better ones are standing up and speaking out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have one voice. Use it.
Yes.
And
A
it's
voice of reason. Become a voice of reason. That's my call to action in the
exactly
book.
there you go. Yeah, yeah. Perfect.
And you are. Again, I want to applaud you, Arshak, for what you're doing
Thank you.
on this program.
Thank you. Well, I think we covered the points that we wanted to cover for this, and we did it in an hour, which is great.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, so, we can always piggyback on all your
Yes.
tips that you have them
Hmm.
as tips, and go back to your book for more material. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to another meeting with you and discussion
Sure.
to record
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
posterity, and or at least as long as it's on the digital market. Um, you and um, I started some time ago. It was years ago. The Atlas Shark Out Loud,
Oh, yeah.
and you were my partner in crime on that
Yes,
for
the
many
call in
episodes.
guest.
But unfortunately, only very few episodes survived, and we had so many good discussions there on the
Yeah.
on Atlas Shrugged.
Now we could
So
call it Atlas Shrugged now in nonfiction.
yeah, but I
It's
still
not fiction anymore. It's a shame,
yeah,
but
yeah I love the book, and I recommend it to everybody to read it.
yeah.
It's the
Yes.
best book ever. Um, I mean, anybody who's interested in integration, they should read it. So yeah, so it'll be fun to meet again, record,
Yes, we will. Hmm.
continue the discussion, and until then, may you have a value-driven day, and uh, make sure you hydrate, stay well.
You too, Arshak,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
audience out there all across the world, right? Weren't you saying people in different? Let's give a shout out to what are those countries? Is it East Europe where you have listeners?
Well, I put this on YouTube. So this video presentation is on YouTube, so everybody watches it. But my
Okay,
podcast has views in I don't know, 594 cities and 94 countries or something like that. It's
94 countries.
yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's crazy that so many people are
Yeah.
interested in uh,
Hello, Genki
the
sa,
idea of wanting to
ni
manage.
hao ma. Bonjour.
Yeah, yeah. I have to start learning.
For those in Brazil, my book is in Portuguese. It's being sold down there, so that's
Perfect. Yeah.
one audience that we could tap into. Como vai você?
So yeah, there's the world is yours. Um,
Yes, yes,
you take as much as you can, and you give as much as you can,
yeah.
and that's it.
I'm sorry, Arshak. My final, and I won't say anything more after this, is next week. 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. As you know, every year I do a reading and from people all over the globe. You're invited again, you and
Thank you.
Armin. They just take a paragraph each, and then we finish by reading the names of the signers who risked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And for you, again, as the ideal of the American dream, this is a great celebration. 250 years.
Yes, indeed. So it's a quarter millennium, and looking forward to 250,000 years instead of
Yeah,
just
yeah,
250 years.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm very excited about Independence Day this year. 250 years is a good chunk of time, but I come from the old country, and 250 years is just like a couple of generations. So America has
Cup
a
of
long
tea.
way to go. Yeah, and I hope it does continue going
Yes.
on the base of the founders and maintain
Mhm.
that pathos and ethos and logos of the founders and never give up on its sovereignty and character.
Mhm.
So,
Perfect.
yes, America, happy birthday. All right, Robert, I'll talk to you soon. Have a great one. Bye bye.
You too.